Okay, everyone, we're going to finish up this short three-part series with some resources for teenagers, for preteens, and also some resources for parenting, marriage, raising a godly family. And I've got a lot of great resources, so it's kind of hard actually to choose from, but I kind of went to the ones I think are just the absolute, the best resources, but also the most accessible resources, I think. So I'm going to start with a classic that has been reprinted just recently by Reformation Heritage Books. And it's a three-part series on the sermons of William Gouge, a famous Presbyterian Puritan pastor who actually helped write the Westminster Confession of Faith. He was part of the Westminster Assembly, and he was alive in the late 16th and early 17th century. But he has a handsome three-volume series called Building a Godly Home, okay? And you can kind of see it right here, Building a Godly Home, William Gouge there, and the front they all kind of look like this, Building a Godly Home. And they're very affordable. I mean, you can buy the whole set for like 20 bucks. And I would really recommend this to parents. These books are just outstanding materials for people to read. I was reading just the other day on baptism and different things of how to engage baptism as a parent, believing parents of a child that's been born. And he's just got some great things to say. He said one on here about learning to not excessively indulge your kids in raising them, but also not be stingy and careless. Not let your kids run around in tatters, and then when they get sick to just hope they get better, but then also don't just lavish clothes on them that they don't even know the value of. There's just some real good practical instructions for child raising, along with just theological, biblical insights on how to raise kids well. And again, this is from his sermons on the book of Ephesians. So very good. So for rearing, children raising and child rearing, very good book. He's got a really good book also on happy marriage. That's the second part of the book here as well. That's really, really good. I've got some other resources for that one too. And then another great book on family living. Just really good stuff. I mean, I think one of his statements on here that I really enjoyed was, he's talking about learning to serve each other in the fear of God. And he really pulls a lot from Ephesians 5:21 that we should mutually submit ourselves one to another. And that's before the wife and the husband and the children discussion. So every Christian has a submitting attitude to one another and of deference and of love. And he talks a lot about that actually throughout the book. It's really good. He says in here, let superiors neither do anything to give consent to their subordinates, nor suffer anything to be done for the sakes of their subordinates, which cannot stand with the fear of God. He says, let subordinates neither do nor stop doing at the will of their superiors anything swerving from the fear of God, but everyone submit themselves one to another in the fear of God. Ephesians 5:21, which is kind of like this, the core verse he uses to talk about family living. It's kind of this mutual submitting to one another kind of at all times. And as you do it together, love abounds is what he's talking about. So I want to commend that three-part series to every dad and mom, whether you're a single dad, single mom, you're married, remarried. Very good series to really have on your shelf and to consider routinely. It's a classic for a reason. The next part, I think, for setting a good example in your marriage for your kids is this great series of books by Ken Sande on his classic work on the peacemaker, that there's a difference between peace faking, peace keeping, and peace making. And I'll be honest, I've been a peace faker for a long time in my life. And peace faking is like you kind of go through the motions. Peacekeeping is you avoid conflict, so you don't have conflict, but you don't really resolve anything. Peacemaking understands that there is some good conflict and there's some bad conflict, and utilizing the reality that we have to fight through the good conflict and use it to resolve and to bring real peace. And this book is kind of a short version of his peacemaking book, his classic book. And this is called Resolving Everyday Conflict by and he's got a co-author here, Kevin Johnson. It's a pretty good book. I really recommend it. It's helped me a lot in my personal life, in my life with my family. And he talks about a lot of things about, this is really good. He says in this section, he talks about learning to forgive. And he kind of gives this example, and he says, I'm sure you both are in terrible pain, talking about a divorce, or talking about adultery in this marriage. He says, I'm sure you're both in terrible pain, but I don't think divorce is going to end this pain. You're just kind of trading pain. Wow. There's a way to keep your marriage together and truly put your past behind you, but you won't find it with this kind of forgiveness that's empty. So he's talking about trading pain there. This is really good. He talks about this other part that's super helpful on forgiveness. He's saying that there's a difference between merely moving on and forgiving. Here we go. This is really helpful. He says, forgiveness is how you move from merely solving a problem to repairing a relationship. Oh man, right? You're not just solving some problem that you all have together, you're repairing the relationship that you're breaking, you're hurting, right? And then he talks about how God's forgiven us, and that gives us the resolve to do so. And then he says, second, forgiveness isn't forgetting. See, there's that moving on aspect. I'm just going to move on, forget this thing. Most of us, myself included, have kind of thought of forgiveness as forgetting mainly, and that's not how it works, okay? He says that forgetting is a passive process, letting a matter fade from memory merely with the passing of time. Forgiving is an active process involving a conscious choice and a deliberate course of action. So this is a very, very, very important book to help us learn that if we want to shepherd our families, we have to learn to solve conflict and forgive biblically together to move forward. So I think the Building a Godly Home series and anything by Ken Sande is absolutely essential for Christian families. Now, moving on to just teenagers in general and to preteens, I think younger kids, children and preteens, this book called Shepherding Your Child's Heart by Ted Tripp, Paul Tripp's brother, very, very good book. And this is more of a pastoring approach to children, and it's child rearing based. It's a little bit similar to William Gouge, but there's more of a counseling kind of psychology background here as well. So there's a foundations on it from the scriptural approach. He's learning to teach us that there's biblical methods and unbiblical methods. And then he also talks a lot about the growth of children from birth to young adulthood. And again, this is more of an adolescent's understanding of child psychology, whereas the Gouge book has some of that in there, but it doesn't really have as much of the child psychology. So he talks about kind of childhood, teenagedom, infancy, and those things. It's a very helpful book biblically and I think for child psychology and child understanding. What are they going through? What are the developments happening? So there's a little bit more of a child psychology side in this book than there is in the William Gouge series. But I would say the William Gouge series has more of a holistic biblical approach to it than this book. But still very good, Shepherding Your Child's Heart. All right, 2 more books to recommend here on family ministry and family leadership and just family culture as a Christian group, okay? One is Doubt and Worry. The other is Sex, Dating, and Relationships. And these 2 books, I think, have been, without fail, kind of money in these areas. The first one is by Tim Lane called Living Without Worry, and he's talking about how to replace anxiety with peace for kids. And obviously, it can be used for adults too, but it's really a good book at focusing in on, I think, an anxiety-laden culture of younger people, teenagers and up to probably young adults, especially in this area of how anxiety is almost a daily thing in their life, beyond just kind of getting anxious for going to school or anxious about your first driving test or things like that, your first date, which I think everyone can identify with that, but just this kind of anxious-laden life that teenagers live with now. This book is so good. Tim Lane's book, Living Without Worry, very helpful. And lastly, kind of one of the best books I've ever read on dating, sex, and relationships that's been put out there by Christians. There's a lot of Christian literature out there. I would actually say a lot of it is unhelpful because it's not really based upon biblical truth. It's based upon maybe rules and legalism. This book is more of, what does the Bible say is the framework for this? And then how can we help our kids make good decisions based upon that? Instead of, here's all the things you need to do, here's all the things you don't need to do, and you need to stop doing all the bad things and start doing all the good things. Which, that's more like teaching someone like a guru instead of like a pastor, okay? So this book is called Sex, Dating, Relationships. It's by 2 authors, actually, Gerald Heistan and Jay Thomas. And these guys are pastors, I would say also theologians in some respects, and very gifted teachers, most importantly, in this area. And parents, if you have a kid who is a preteen, is already talking about dating, already interested in the opposite sex, has interest in dating, is talking about that, you need to start using this book or the principles from this book to talk through that with the kids, because it's talking first about marriage and sex, and then dating is this kind of dilemma issue that it engages later of like, how do we date, given that this is really what the Bible's focusing on, marriage and sex within marriage. If that's how the Bible's focusing on it, where does dating come in? Does it come in at all? Should we avoid it? Should we not avoid it? It's got some really good stuff in that. So in this little third part of my teaching series, I was really hoping to give you some materials to help your teenagers and your preteens, to help also you lead, family life in godliness and God's will. You got to have some good resources. And part of leading a family is learning to also lead together as a unit if you are married, learning to not have conflict just for the sake of conflict, not just, avoiding conflict and peace fake your way around it, but to learn to lead from a place of love and repentance. And as kids see that, they're going to see that family worship time is authentic. They're going to see that it's real. And they're going to start pursuing that in a more authentic way themselves. And, just remember, these family worship times are not meant to be legalism. It's meant to be, we get to do this. We get to prepare ourselves for the Lord's Day by worshiping as a family and also having some time alone when we can scrape it together, right? And so I want to encourage you with that today, that 3-part series. So kind of family catechism, teaching our kids in family catechism, learning to teach our kids how to sing, of course, and to pray, and shepherd them in family worship, right? Is the second part. And then family living, family life, family issues with children, and learning to raise them in the fear of the Lord, and how to do that with some good resources, I think, on that as well. So I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any other questions or comments, just put them down in the comment section there, or email me. Hopefully I can get back to you and give you some other insights or some other thoughts on it too. Hope it's helpful. Okay.